The DOJ finally releases the Mueller Report. Pete Buttigieg is moving up in the polls on the strength of his attacks on Christianity and Mike Pence, which is strange considering he claims to be a Christian, but what do I know? And Eric Swalwell beclowns himself yet again. Let's do this, shall we? I'm Big E, and this is the Liberty Cast. Happy Easter, everybody. Obviously, this week has given us a story that has been dominating the news cycle, but even so, this is probably going to be a somewhat abbreviated show today, not just because it's Easter, but some other things going on that have required my attention over this past week, and I haven't had much of a chance to focus on anything else really besides the Mueller Report. And we're also recording a little earlier than usual. So if anything happens later Saturday night or on Sunday that I would normally address, this is why. Now, having said all that, let's hit it. But like I said, the DOJ finally released the redacted report, and I'm going to try not to dive too deep into it because there are people out there that have been doing tremendous work. Dan Bongino, John Solomon, and others who've been tracking and exposing all of the lies and inconsistencies in this whole Russia collusion hoax. But I want to go back to the beginning and how this whole thing got started. It was opposition research, the dirty dossier, this dossier that was compiled by a British spy who had professed his hatred for Donald Trump, paid for by Hillary Clinton and the DNC through a law firm named Perkins Coie. This dossier was salacious, to say the least, and largely, if not completely, unverified. And so why do I want to focus on the dossier? Because analysis, deep dives into the entire report, summaries, you can get that anywhere. And I've told you about all of the people, well, not all, but I've told you about people that are doing that kind of work. But this dossier of Oppo quote unquote research was paid for by Clinton and Hillary Clinton and the DNC. They hate Trump. Compiled by a guy who hates Trump. Turned over to Washington swamp rats who hate Trump. And this document was used to obtain FISA warrants to surveil members of Trump's team. Now, Mueller, the special counsel, he knew this dossier was fake. And we know he knew it was fake because his top deputy, Andrew Weissman, was briefed on it back in 2016. He was briefed on it and told that it was unverified and most likely completely untrue. He was briefed on it along with then Deputy Director Andy McCabe, lead investigator Peter Strzok, and FBI lawyer Lisa Page. And he was briefed on this by Bruce Orr, who was a senior DOJ official whose wife worked at Fusion GPS alongside Christopher Steele, who compiled the dossier. I mean, the whole thing just stinks. But again, this happened in July of 2016, just before the investigation was officially opened. Mueller wasn't appointed special counsel until May of 2017. And then in August of 2017, McCabe wrote a new memo expanding the scope of Mueller's investigation, most likely to give him authority to build an obstruction case, because the original memo was strictly for Russian collusion. But then in September, Mueller chose not to renew the FISA application. Now, they have to be renewed every 90 days, and this time he would have been the one swearing to its veracity, and he wisely decided against that. Why? Because he knew it was fake. I mean, do they really expect us to believe that Weissman, his number two, didn't tell him that there was nothing to the dossier and that it was junk. Lead investigator Peter Strzok said that there was no there in reference to the dossier. Everyone knew it was fake, and yet they continued to investigate. And not only that, but they swore under oath as to the veracity of the document in the FISA application and the subsequent renewal applications. Because there are rules requiring that the facts presented in an FBI request to spy on United States citizens be thoroughly vetted for accuracy and presented to the court only if verified. And presenting unverified material to the FISA court in an application to spy on American citizens is a violation of what is called the Woods procedures. But we all already know that none of that was verified. Christopher Steele admitted to it. James Comey testified to that fact before the Senate in June of 2017. Andy McCabe testified under oath that there would have been no FISA warrants without the dossier. And this brings me to my point. There is a doctrine in American jurisprudence referred to as the fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine. And basically, this rule renders evidence inadmissible in court if it was derived from evidence that was not obtained legally. So if the methods by which the evidence was obtained is tainted, then the evidence or fruit is therefore also tainted. As an example, if there was an illegal search and that illegal search turned up evidence, that evidence is inadmissible. If a law enforcement officer plants evidence and that planted evidence leads to the confession to another crime, then that planted evidence and the subsequent confession are inadmissible. So the fact that they swore under oath that the facts laid out in the application were verified, they committed a crime to obtain the warrants, which means they were obtained illegally. Therefore, any evidence obtained from them is inadmissible. So the FBI's investigation was predicated on the dossier, which was unverified and largely proven to be false. And as I said, McCabe already admitted that no FISA warrants would have been pursued without it. Then everything subsequent to that is also not admissible. I mean, couldn't be more clear that this was a political witch hunt. But it's not over. It's not over. Zero collusion, zero obstruction. Yes, we know, but it's not over. The release of the Mueller report did not end anything. I've mentioned before how they've pivoted to obstruction. Mary Catherine Ham, who was one of my favorites when she was on Fox and is my favorite right now on CNN, unloaded on the leftists on the panel with both barrels the other day. Listen to this.
I hope nobody missed leg day because carrying these goalposts are going to be very heavy if you want to do it for the next 18 months.
Boom. MK dropped the hammer. Because what she was doing was pointing out the fact that whenever the left doesn't get their way, whenever things in this investigation have not gone their way, have not turned out the way they wanted them to, they shift and they move the goalposts, as she said. And collusion turned out not to be a thing. So now it's obstruction. Never mind the fact that no crime has been committed. He's cooperated fully, released, over 1 million pages of documents, never once invoked executive privilege, which was his right. He let his White House counsel testify or be interviewed by Robert Mueller. How can any of that be construed as obstruction? But yet deleting 33,000 emails, destroying phones, using BleachBit to wipe hard drives isn't? I mean, come on. And this point can't be stressed enough. There has to be an underlying crime in order for there to be any obstruction. And if no crime was committed, You cannot obstruct justice. You can't ice skate if there's no ice. You can't drive a car if there's no engine in it. And you can't obstruct justice if no crime has been committed. The left keeps pushing these narratives about President Trump that he's a racist, yet he's done more for the black community in 2 years than Obama did in his disastrous 8 years. I keep hearing that he's a Russian asset, yet he's been tougher on Russia than Obama ever thought of being. And the investigation into that allegation turned up no evidence whatsoever. And I keep hearing that he's attempted to obstruct the investigation, but we've already gone over that. So he is the worst, most incompetent racist, most incompetent Russian asset, and obstructor of justice that ever lived, because he's doing it all wrong. I really think the Dems are in the process of handing over the presidency to Trump again in 2020. Say what you want about him, but everything they've thrown at him has turned out to be complete wastes of time and money. He's the Teflon Don, pardon the use of an old turn of phrase. Nothing sticking to him. At some point, one would think the leftists would just move on. And there are some adults on that side of the aisle, like Steny Hoyer, that are suggesting that they do just that, move on. But they won't. They won't. When you have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Maxine Waters and the rest of those far Looney Tune leftists talking about impeachment and stuff like that, they're not going to move on. And I think that's to their detriment. As I said, I think they're handing him the election. But off of the release of this report, his campaign fundraising has increased 250%. And he was already far outpacing them in terms of fundraising. If it wasn't for the fact that so much time has been wasted on this while the border crisis rages on, record numbers of people are addicted to and dying from opioid overdoses. What they need to do is go about the business of actually running the country. But I think we all know that the Dems are like petulant children, incapable of rational thought. And as such, I think we're stuck with this for the next year and a half. Now, if we can get the majority back from the leftists in 2020, get some Republicans in office who actually want to do their jobs, because make no mistake, there are some Republicans who are leftists. Make no mistake about it. So we need to root them out, get some people in there who actually want to govern from a conservative point of view. Maybe we'll finally be able to move on. Okay, I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on that, and don't take my word for any of that. I encourage you to look it up for yourself. I'm going to put some links up on the website so that you can see what I'm seeing, but do your own research. And I think that when you do, and not just, I read CNN, I read Huffington Post, I read from a variety of sources so that I know what the leftists are saying, and then I make my own conclusions. And I encourage you to do the same thing. And if you're open-minded, I think you'll come down on the same side that I do. If not, thanks for listening anyway. All right, y'all, we're going to take a break. And when we get back, we're going to talk about Mayor Pete. We'll be right back. The mayor of South Bend, Indiana, Pete Buttigieg, or Mayor Pete, as he is being affectionately known these days, is a rising star on the Democrat side. I think that his being an openly gay man is only part of the reason why, though. I think his repeated attacks on Mike Pence, and by extension, a large number of Christians in this country, has contributed to his ascension. And he's not, I'm not saying that he's way up there in the polls. He's not, but he's gotten quite a bump from 0% back in January up to anywhere between 6 and 11%, depending on the poll you look at. But there's a significant segment of the population in this country that has a deep-seated, if not hatred for, maybe not hatred, but disrespect of Christianity. I see it on social media all the time. And just on my feed yesterday, somebody said that Christians are the most unchristian people ever. Blah, blah, blah. They say that Mike Pence is hateful. I blatantly asked why they think he's hateful. What has he done that was so hateful? And I was told that they shouldn't have to give me examples of something that was so blatantly obvious. But here it is a week later, and I still haven't gotten any. Pence has never said anything negative about Buttigieg, even after his attacks. He's never attacked Buttigieg for his homosexuality or for any other reason. When he deployed to Afghanistan, Pence called him and wished him well. The only time Pence ever publicly mentioned Buttigieg prior to his run was to pay him a compliment. And he said, and I quote, "I hold Mayor Buttigieg in the highest personal regard. I see him as a dedicated public servant and a patriot." And this was right after he came out and said he was gay. So, again, Mike Pence, he's being a homophobe all wrong. I mean, if that's an attack, I would really hate to hear what he would say if he were upset with the mayor. I mean, come on. But here's the thing. Christians have a biblical view of homosexuality. According to the Bible, it's a sin for which people who engage in that sin or live their lives openly in that lifestyle, they need to ask for forgiveness. And it's not just Christians. Catholicism, Judaism, Mormonism, and of course Islam all consider homosexuality to be a sin. But Christianity is the only one commonly singled out. Christians aren't the ones that want to kill homosexuals. They throw gay people off roofs in places like Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Syria. No one ever talks about the Ilhan Omars or Rashida Tlaibs of the world when talking about their views on homosexuality. They never say anything about Orthodox Jews or Muslims. It's always Christians. And somehow Mike Pence is the standard bearer. But Christians are supposed to love people. Hate the sin, love the sinner, as it were. Not true in Islam. So there's a disconnect somewhere. But something else about Mayor Pete annoys me. And to clarify, before anyone jumps all over me, it's his attacks on Christianity, not his homosexuality, that annoys me. Just so that we're clear. But it's his stance on infanticide. Now, this guy claims to be a Christian himself, which again is kind of mystifying to me, but anyway. But he claims to be a Christian and that his faith informs a lot of his decisions. But has also said that late-term abortion, or what I call infanticide, is a woman's personal decision, and that the morality of said abortion is not knowable. Not knowable? You claim to be a Christian and the morality of killing a baby is not knowable? That, okay. Listen to this.
Well, the way I explain this, and it's, something that I think any pro-choice official or candidate from a conservative state faces, is that I respect and understand where others are coming from. Many of my supporters, many of my friends view this issue differently. But we're talking about who gets to make that decision. And the way this has been characterized, especially lately, is asking questions that almost in themselves are misleading about the medical situations that women face, not to mention just the personal decisions that they're confronted with. And to me, it's a very complex issue that should be guided by a very simple principle, which is that having these things dictated by government does not make that decision any easier. In some ways, some of these questions they're religious or metaphysical, however you want to put them. They're not things that are knowable in a traditional sense, not questions that you can get the answer. When you're wrestling with a just incredibly painful set of decisions in these horrifying medical cases where the mother and or the child can't survive or is at a tremendous risk, figuring out what to do morally there, that's not a technical solution. That's not something that you can compute the right answer to. That is something that happens as a matter of conscience.
The left's utter disregard for human life is monstrous. And every time I think about it, it just baffles me that it's even an issue. I just don't understand, because the medical issues that he talks about that could jeopardize the life of either the mother or the child or both in the third trimester. In the third trimester, doctors have said that it is never medically necessary to kill the baby. Never. It would be delivered via C-section. So it's just, they just want to kill babies. I can't see any other way to put it than that. They just want to kill babies. Change my mind. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Eric Swalwell is at it again. I think we'll be talking about him every week from now until he drops out of the race, because this guy obviously has no shot. He's a complete moron. But this week he got into it with the one and only Dana Lash, and she tweeted at him asking how he planned to confiscate guns, because you all know, we talked about this before, the proposal he put forth was a gun quote unquote buyback, and anyone who did not comply with either selling the government back their guns, most likely at a loss, or having them store those guns at a hunting club or other facility where they did not have access to them on a regular basis. If people did not do one of those two things, then they would be rounded up and put in jail. So Dana asked him how he planned on confiscating those guns. Now, he said on Tucker Carlson's show that he wasn't for sending cops or troops door to door, but in reality, how else are you going to do it? So this was his response. Ms. Lash, I see that you spent another day blowing up my Twitter. Thank you for following. But here's the deal. You're an NRA mouthpiece. I don't aim down, so I don't debate mouthpieces. But send me a President Oliver North, I'll debate him anywhere. # enough is enough. Wow. So asking a legit question about a policy you proposed is now blowing up your Twitter? Dana, she's an NRA mouthpiece, and him debating her would be punching down? So what he's basically saying is he's better than her. And let's be honest, all the leftists who hate guns think that they are better and more virtuous than those of us that value the Second Amendment and own firearms. And then he takes it a step further and says, send me your boss. First off, Dana would smoke him in a debate about guns and the Second Amendment. He's proven that he knows nothing, and she literally wrote the book on it. And second, how sexist is that? You're just a mouthpiece, darling. Let me speak to your supervisor. Seriously? This guy never misses an opportunity to beclown himself. Now, I wonder how real his invitation to Colonel North is, because I think the colonel would destroy him as well. Anyone with even a rudimentary knowledge and understanding of the Second Amendment and guns could destroy him in a debate. And when you add in an actual knowledge of firearms, he really would have no chance against someone like that. None. Clown. I mean, this guy looks uncomfortable when he's just being interviewed by people who are often friendly. When you see him on his CNN or MSNBC hits, he still looks uncomfortable. And then when somebody like Martha McCallum or Tucker Carlson presses him a little bit, he gets even more flustered. Can you imagine what it would look like if he had to go up against Dana Lash or Colonel North or Colion Noir? He would get utterly embarrassed, smoked, lambasted. Pick an adjective that would describe his complete and utter humiliation, and that would be it. I really want to see something like that happen. Idiot. All right, folks, that is our show for today. We did run a little shorter than usual so that we could get you out of here and enjoy your Easter. But please, however you listen to us, whether it's iTunes, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, any of the other popular podcast platforms, we're on a bunch of them. But hit that like button, leave a review, or subscribe, leave a review. It really helps us out. But you can also follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. It's at The Liberty Cast on all three platforms. I look forward to hearing from you. But until next time, keep your head on a swivel and stay safe, everybody.